Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker for this afternoon, former Spanish Prime Minister José María Aznar, who is going to speak to us on the subject of this conference, which is religion and democracy. Former Prime Minister Aznar is a good friend of Georgetown. Indeed, he is a distinguished scholar in the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service, and he has been throughout his career, particularly during his prime ministership, a good friend of the United States. Mr. Aznar began his political career back in 1979. In 1982, he was first elected a member of parliament from Avia. In 1989, following the refounding of the Partido Popular, he was chosen as a party candidate for prime minister and in the general elections of that year. The following year, he was elected chairman of his party, and he led it in the elections of 1993, 1996, and 2000. He was prime minister from 1996 to 2004, and throughout these four legislatures, he served as a representative in the parliament from Madrid. And between 1989 and 1996, he was leader of the opposition. This is a man with deep and broad experience of democracy and, as we're going to see, on the subject of religion and democracy. You have a more extensive written biography of the former Prime Minister in the program, but I'd like to highlight just one brief part of that, which I think is particularly relevant to our subject today. One of his most serious concerns is the battle against terrorism. He's in favor of a firm policy, one that is against any kind of political concession, combined with close international cooperation between democratic countries against terrorism. He's a strong supporter of the Atlantic relationship and the European Union's commitment to freedom and economic reform. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former Prime Minister José María Aznar.
Thank you very much, Professor Ford, for your kind introduction. It is a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to address this Symposium of Democracy and Religion for many reasons. First, because as a former politician, I always believe, and still believe, in freedom and democracy. Furthermore, I always defend that the values enshrined in our nations were not just for the benefit of the West, liberal democracies, but also for all humankind. Second, because as an individual, I am a believer, and as such, I always defend freedom of worship and tolerance, here and everywhere. And thirdly, because I am convinced that religion, far from being marginal in our public sphere, is becoming one of the driving forces in shaping our world and our future. Actually, to be more precise, I do think that the question of our time, the most important question in our time, is the relationship between Christianity, the Western world, and Islam. Coming from a country made fighting the Islam for 8 centuries, this is not big news. But bearing in mind the rationalistic and secularized political realm in which we are living, bringing back the religious factor to the fore is a real novelty. Whether we, politicians or former politicians, take the right lessons from that, it is to be seen. Anyway, as I said, it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. In a few days, we will be celebrating the 20th anniversary of an historic victory, the fall of the Berlin Wall, a symbol of European division and Soviet domination over half of the European continent. 1989 marked the beginning of the end of the terrible forces of communism that brought so much desolation and death to the world. The defeat of Nazism in 1945, followed by that of communists 40 years later, are two landmarks in the history of freedom, as well as in the defense and promotion of democracy. Because, at the end of the day, it was the triumph of freedom over oppression, of individual dignity over social tyranny, that was really at stake in both conflicts. If I'm pointing out this to you now, is not for the pleasure of literary digression. It is because I want to underline one fact. The victory of the forces of good over these evils was only made possible thanks to the sacrifice, perseverance, and will of America, its people, and its leaders. Without the US intervention, I am not sure what the outcome would have been, but I am convinced that Europe and the entire world would be very different today. And I like to highlight this fact for two reasons. First, because I believe it is only fair to recall the price that Americans have paid in defending freedom beyond their own borders. And second, because in a time of exhaustion and fatigue from too many casualties in far distant wars, it is important for Americans to understand the exact role of the United States in today's world. The United States has been a decisive power, an indispensable power in the words of former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and it will continue to be so in the foreseeable future. Failure to understand this may call for policies and exit strategies that may cause more problems in the long run than solutions in the short term. A visit to Arlington Cemetery is enough to remind us of the fact that many have laid down their lives to ensure a better future, and that their future is now our present, something we should never forget, since our future will be the present of our children and grandchildren. I believe in freedom and in extending freedom throughout the world, and I believe so for at least three main reasons. First, because I believe that it is within a climate of freedom that the dignity of the individual is best promoted. Being free from fear, it is the only way to realize freedom of expression, freedom of beliefs, and freedom of social and political engagement. There is a second powerful reason why I believe in democracy. I am convinced that it is the best political system when it comes to promoting development and fighting against inequality and poverty. Though so many argue that development and liberty are two different things, it is not less true that 19% of the worst performing economies over the last 4 decades have belonged to non-democratic governments. Practically the same percentage applies in the case of humanitarian crises, fleeing refugees, and famines. The third reason that underlies my conviction concerning the benefits of democracy has to do with a desire to guarantee a world that is more secure. There is a close link between the nature of a political system and its inclination towards violence and the use of force. A leader over 200 years ago, in 1795, to be precise, the German philosopher Immanuel Kant expanded his hypothesis that political freedom with a republic, the equivalent to a democracy in modern terms, was an essential factor in eliminating war from our lives. His thesis is present in an essay that is largely forgotten, entitled Perpetual Peace. Liberalism, in its classical European sense, has always been based on Kant's thesis, mostly out of a sense of coherence with its beliefs regarding the character of the people, which is to say, the masses, and the bending influence of trade relations. According to this view, closer and more active relations mean that nations are less likely to resort to force when it comes to resolving disputes. Simply put, democracies are not inclined to fight amongst themselves, and when they are forced to go to war against no-democratic enemies, they do so as a last resort, seeking to achieve victory as soon as possible and with minimum loss of life and property in both sides, aggressor and defender. Finally, there is a fourth reason why I believe in democracy. Only under democratic and tolerant regimes, religious freedom can flourish. We have too many examples of the contrary, from China to Saudi Arabia, just to mention 2 cases. So I don't think I need to elaborate more on this. Forgive me if I have gone on a longer than I intend in explaining why I not only believe in democracy, but why I am convinced that expanding the free world can only have eminently favorable consequences for us all. But why religion is important today? In a nutshell, whether you are a believer or not, religion has just exploded in front of our faces in its most radical and dramatic expression on September 11th and thereafter. I am very aware that not all Muslims are jihadists, but all jihadists are Muslims. Let me be clear, because this is something very sensitive. I am not saying or implying that we are confronted by Islam or that we are at war with Islam. What I'm trying to say is that there is a struggle within the Islamic world between moderates and radicals, to use a familiar expression to us. where the radicals and extremists are using or abusing the Quran teachings in justification on their activities. It seems also to me that today the extremists are getting the upper hand in this battle for the control of the Muslim world. 8 years after September 11, Al-Qaeda seems to be a threat of the past here in America. But it is not, I'm afraid. If they have not attacked again this country, it's because they did not have the opportunity to do so, thanks to the effort both by many to thwart their ambitions. Here and in far distant places like Afghanistan. But make no mistake, if you have the time to look at the map of terrorist attacks in the last years, the picture cannot be more troublesome. From Morocco to the Philippines, they are more active in what they consider to be the land of Islam, the geography of the all-time gone caliphate. They are nonetheless committed to rebuild. If Al-Qaeda is lethal, it's not simply because its global reach and its states for mass destruction, important as they are these characteristics. To me, Al-Qaeda is lethal because it's religious motivation. The jihad is not another insurgency, even if this time is global. It's a religious phenomenon, a religious war waged against us, infidels. And precisely because of this religious component, it has been so difficult to understand by Western secular societies. I remember very well that when I started talking about their goal to rebuild the caliphate, people looked at me as if I were a lunatic. And not so many years ago. From my own experience, I am convinced that the war on terror can be won because, as I have already explained in previous lecture at this university, I myself have fought against terrorism, and I have faith in the strength of democracy. I know that victory is possible, although it may be hard-won and demand perseverance and considerable effort. But victory is possible. The victory over just the terrorists may not be enough to guarantee a peaceful world. I am convinced that freedom, tolerance, and democracy in Arab societies not only are also possible, but mandatory if we really want to avoid future setbacks. The Western community has been tackling the issue of exporting democracy at high cost. In Iraq, for instance, during the last years, and is now facing the mounting problem of a nation and democracy building at the same time in Afghanistan. I know that it is not very fashionable nowadays to defend enlarging the democratic camp in the world. Even less about democracy in the Muslim world. A logical reaction to the many difficulties encountered in the recent past. What we don't need to fall into despair or adopt a defeatist attitude. I declare myself an optimist. 40 years ago, for instance, when my elders talked about the future of Spain after the General Franco, they were wary and sometimes even fearful of democratic freedom. Spain was a nation of pure individualists, they said, incapable of governing themselves without some authority from above imposing a sense of respect for order with a firm hand. They were wrong. And all those of us who fought to make democracy a reality were right. 25 years ago, very few entertained the possibility of forcing a democratic transformation of what at the time was the Soviet Union. And then just when there was most intent of achieving an intent cordial, of resigning itself to mere peaceful coexistence with Moscow, the President Ronald Reagan inspired a change of perception and contributed to a process that led to the collapse of the entire Soviet system. Now is the moment to overcome resistance and to look on the challenges of today and tomorrow with new eyes, free from the blinkers of the past. The main challenge that lies before us consists in transforming the Middle East. And this is a challenge we must tackle successfully. We have no other choice if we really wish to put an end to decades of accumulated hatred and violence against our values and us. And here is where religious freedom comes into the picture stronger than ever, as a fundamental right for every citizen. But let us be serious. Religious freedom, as an individual right to profess his or her own beliefs, is one thing, and an important one. But what it is even more important, given the current political environment, is the freedom to talk publicly about religion. It is totally unacceptable that, for instance, that after fighting and dying for freedom in places like the Balkans, or Iraq, or Afghanistan, we put us blinders because we don't want to see terrible things perfectly in accordance with the Sharia law. I am not thinking in the cruelty of many of its punishments, but in things like the death penalty for those convert to other religions different from Islam. Abdul Rahman was able to free Afghanistan, for instance, and convert it to Christianity, and merge into Italian society quietly. Others like Ayaan Hirsi Ali or Mahdi Cristiano Alam must was surrendered by bodyguards, 24 hours, 7 days every week. Salman Rushdie has been hiding for 30 years now. Thus, if we are really serious in transforming the Middle East and the Muslim world, we should start thinking in how to put religion freedom back into the strategic and diplomatic agenda. There cannot be religious freedom without democracy, and we cannot accept any system called democratic that does not promote religious freedom. As simple as that. Furthermore, I do think it is time to start asking some of our traditional allies and friends in the region for some reciprocity. It has become unsustainable that I have to accept large investments in mosques and Islamic teaching in my own country, but I cannot attend mass in their soil, less to build a church. Religious freedom cannot work in one direction, and we must accept the practice. Dear friends, it has become very difficult for an former politician, even for an active politician, to talk about religion in the public sphere. It is time to say enough of this. As in war, if you don't take the hill, your enemy will. There is no reason why we must surrender our beliefs to leave others to impose theirs upon us. Thank you very much for your attention in this meeting. Yeah.
All right. We have a microphone for any of those who would like to ask questions.
Hello, my name is Ravza Kavakjikan. I'm a political science student, PhD student at Howard University. I was just curious about what you think about the Alliance of Civilizations project, because so far, from my understanding, you are a supporter of the war on terror, and I was hearing a little bit of us and them terminology, so I was just curious about what you think about that. Thank you.
I support democracy and I support freedom. And when democracy and freedom are attacked, we support the idea that we have the right to defend democracy and freedom. It's very simple. And I consider that after the attacks in September 11, after the attacks in London, after the attacks in different parts of the world, in Madrid even, it is necessary a reaction. This is my view. I respect all of the views about this, but if you prefer, if you prefer, if some people, someone prefer that would defend the idea that this is possible attack in every country and murder 2,000 or 3,000 people and not have a reaction in defense of the democracy or freedom of the people, I am disagree with this position. Second, I don't know exactly what is this of an alliance of civilizations. I don't know. I understand the dialogue in different cultures, of the dialogue on different religions, but not the alliance of civilization. But for me, there is one civilization, only one civilization. And I believe in an alliance of the people civilized, but not in a strange alliance between incompatible things. Well, for example, if you defend the idea that men's and women's are equal, it's very difficult to establish an alliance with some people that defend that the men's and women are non-equals, right, are different rights. You can establish a dialogue, but not establish an alliance, because what is the goal of this alliance? That I renounce my idea that the equality between men and women this is absurd. If I defend tolerance of pluralism, I cannot establish an alliance with defend the opposite. If I defend freedom of expression, you cannot establish an alliance with this. This idea of the alliance of civilization, it is absurd. Another thing is the dialogue of different policies, different cultures. This is a possibility. But civilization is one. Respect for the life, respect equality in the woman and men, the law, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. This is a question. When I was prime minister, I promote a dialogue of different cultures. And I visit Tehran, and I visit Iran. In the times of Khatami president, Khatami was a friend for me, and this is a friend for me. And I spent a lot of hours talking with him about the dialogue with different cultures, different policies, but not about an alliance that this is impossible, because this one essential reason. Civilization is only one, and the rest is dialogue between cultures or between policies.
Hi, I'm Harrison Finch. I'm a student at Vanderbilt University, and I was wondering if you're disappointed that President Obama has yet to send additional troops to Afghanistan, and is this sending a mixed message to our European allies?
No entendido. You can repeat, please.
I was wondering if you're disappointed that President Obama has yet to send additional troops to Afghanistan, and is this sending a mixed message to our European allies?
Well, I am a politician. I am a former politician that like very much in other times to respect word and respect promises. Okay. And I wish a very great success for this administration in America, and because I think the success of the United States is very important for the world. No? And but this success will depend on the decision of the different policies. When some people ask me, how is leadership? I always answer, leadership is take decisions. And the worst situation when you confront or deal with a problem is the indecision. The indecision is the worst path to exercise leadership. And to be a leadership, to become leadership is a decision of the people that in a democracy voting for you or no. That's voting for you, but you are the leader in the country. But it's voluntary. It's not mandatory. And now, the current administration defined two classes of war that confront the United States, to confront the different countries. One is the good war, Afghanistan. Another is the bad war, Iraq. In political terms, it's simple. The bad war is the Bush war, and the good war is the necessary and indispensable war, Afghanistan. Seems to me that use exactly the words of the current President of the United States. Necessary and indispensable war. Well, if you define the situation in Afghanistan in these terms, take decision is very important. And the first question is, do you want win or no? If you want win, you will take decision for win. If there is not decision for win, you will lose. What is lose or organize a pull out of the troops of Afghanistan? It is possible. It is a policy. It is a possibility. But it is necessary to explain the consequence of this decision. A defeat from the United States, of the United States and NATO in Afghanistan, you can imagine, I invite you to imagine the consequence for Afghanistan, for Pakistan, for Iran, for Iraq, for the Middle East, for the nuclear proliferation in different parts of the world, and for the situation, the United States and the NATO in the world. What will be an enormous catastrophe? This is one of the reasons, because if you have the will to win, you put on the table the means to win. If every day that you don't take this decision, is a more serious problem for us. This is my view, and good luck, because good luck for all of us. because it's not a problem only for the President of the United States. No, it's a problem for this country. It's a problem for every country in the world, even for us Europeans.
Thank you. Last week, Secretary I'm Jordan Pendergrass. I'm a student here at Georgetown. And last week, Secretary Clinton presented the report on international religious freedom. And as you mentioned, China and Saudi Arabia, everybody can pretty much agree that those are egregious violations of religious freedom. But in that document, even countries like Spain or Israel or Mexico, they don't always receive a perfect reporting. There's imperfections, there's room for improvement. So how do you define religious freedom? And how do you, with your definition of religious freedom, how do you examine countries with good democratic regimes and liberal human rights systems? Thank you.
I don't know the exact words of this report about Spain, but maybe it's a reference of the situation of Christians in Spain, because for the rest there is no problem. You have absolutely free of expression. If you build a mosque in Spain, you have no problem. If you can be converted Muslims, you don't have no problem for you. But Muslim or Hinduist, so I don't know. If you can build a synagogue, it's not a problem. This is not a problem. If you are defend the respect to Ramadan in a company, or in a hotel, or a university, it's no problem for you. If you defend the respect for the traditional Christian days, it's a problem for you. Excuse me, the most of the Spaniards are Christians, are Catholics. Another thing is they're more or less practicants, no? But there is no problem in terms of freedom. What is this freedom? Freedom is the capacity to establish, to talking in the streets, in the square, publicly, without consequence, without to be arrested for the policy. Freedom is to have the possibility to build a church in Casablanca, or in Riyadh, or in Cairo. It's the possibility to speak about or teaching about the gospel or the values of Christianity. This is freedom. And the rest is freedom in our countries. I believe that in our countries, in America and Europe, there is no problem of freedom. Seriously, there is no problem of freedom. The freedom is a problem in other countries. That unfortunately the evolution of these countries is not a good evolution in this moment. And the situation of the Christian people in different parts of the world is very difficult. I'm Christian, but I don't like talking about my personal beliefs publicly in my political life, during my political life. But I cannot explain, for example, my country. I cannot explain Europe without the Christian roots. And this is one of the reasons because at my time I defend that the European Constitution and the current Treaty of Lisbon are reference should be exists a reference of the Christian, European Christian roots. Because you can be believer or no. You can be Christian, you can be Catholic, you can be evangelical, you can be Hinduist, you can be, I don't know, you like. But if you're talking about history, if you're talking about the system of values that forge a society, our countries in Europe or in America, it's impossible to explain this without talking about the root Christians. And another question, very different question, if you go to the church on Sunday or no. This is another question, and your personal beliefs. The question is to have the capacity to explain the history. And this is very clear in all the terms of a political expression of freedom in Europe. And this is one of the reasons because I consider that we must defend our system of values. And our system of values is freedom, is democracy, is tolerance, is pluralism. It's equality between men and women. It's equality before the law. What is the problem in some European societies about this expression of multiculturalism? That is best understand. That there is different laws. A law for the people, for Christian people, a law for another people with another religion. Do you understand that if you hear that in different countries, some, for example, United Kingdom, some people defend that the Sharia were converted in a part of the British rural law? I mean, good to me. This is a very complicated. This is one law for one part of society, another law for another part of society. I don't believe in this. I believe that everybody is equal before the law. And another thing is the personal beliefs of the people. And another thing is the roots of a society. And to explain or understand without complex these ideas is necessary. Okay, thank you.
Okay, this will be our last question.
Thank you. My name is Anwar Hadam. I was one of the elected members of parliament in Algeria in 1991. I'm currently the president for Movement for Liberty and Social Justice. Just I've never heard this from your word. And I would like to thank the center really to give us this opportunity to understand the Prime Minister. You have said that there is an internal debate within the Muslim world between moderate and extremist. However, I don't see any, all the positions that you have related and accused Islam of are actually position of the extremists. The moderate does not think that somebody who changed his religion has to be killed. The moderates believe that there is, for men and women, they have same status. The moderate believe that any group of religious people are entitled to their own religious activities, even in the Muslim world. So what I'm saying that, how do you feel, if you really believe that they are moderate and extremist, what have you done, or what do you advise people how to support the moderate? Final note, you have said that you don't believe in alliance of civilization. I understand that, because this alliance of civilizations is against extremism from all religions, from all civilizations. Because we do believe we don't have only one civilization. And if you go to the academic definition of civilization, you will see any group of people are entitled to their own civilization, their own way of life. Alliance of civilization is to accept our differences and to really to suppress and to oppress all form of extremism. And I thank you.
Well, your country suffer, unfortunately, a lot with the force of extremism. The internal war in Algeria is very, very tough and very cruel. And the attack of the fundamentalist group in your country is had been terrible, terrible. It continued to be a complicated situation. Fortunately, my good friend, the President Bouteflika, is in the President of the Republic. He trying to improve the things, improve really the things. But it's a good expression of the difficult circumstances in the evolution of a society. I wish that the evolution of Muslim societies were more quickly fast in favor of these values that we can share. But we must to talking with clarity among us, because if you can to promote some dialogue, you can to promote some understanding and between us, among us, is indispensable to understand. Tolerance is understand the reasons of the others, not share the reason of the others. But there is a prior question. There is reasons in one side, reasons in another side. One of the problems of the European society is that the current Pope denounces, I think, very strong and exactly, is that Europe is in this moment the kingdom of relativism. And this is a problem serious for us. Why? Because a society without values is very difficult that in the future survive. And recover values and the expression of the values is absolutely fundamental. And I believe in our values, and I am available to share these values and to dialogue about different values. But I don't like to establish any alliance with the people that their will is destroy our values. No. To destroy our values, no. To substitute our values, I don't like. But I can listen. And one thing is the dialogue, another thing is, as I said before, impossible alliance. Impossible alliance is the impossible policy, and the politics consists in trying to resolve problems, not to create more problems. And resolve problems is a difficult task, but it's the task of the politicians and other people that support some decision of the politician. If it's possible, in favor of freedom and tolerance and dialogue and pluralism, but to maintain seriously these ideas.
Join me in thanking President.
Thank you very much.